This is the Chewing the Cud podcast, a podcast for the UK dairy industry, brought to you from the southwest of England and listened to around the world. Hello and welcome to Chewing the Cud podcast. My name's Andrew Jones and with me today as always is...
Sarah Bolt.
How you doing, Sarah?
I'm very well, thank you, Andrew. And how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, thank you. Today, well, it's a little bit exciting, isn't it?
It is. It's a little bit different, this one, wasn't it?
Yeah, this is, I'm sure many of you, or hopefully many of you remember, we were talking about the podcast live event that we were going to hold in February, and this is the outcome of the first session we held.
It was a really well-attended session, wasn't it, up at the Agri-Tech Centre?
Yeah, definitely. Well, and we say it, so thank you to UK Agri-Tech Centre for hosting it. We'll say it again now. But yeah, and I'll be honest, I've had some nice feedback from other people in the industry since that said they'd heard it went well, which is lovely to hear. So thank you for that. But yeah, so it's a long one because it was such a good conversation. It starts off with our guests talking, and then we opened it up to our audience for questions. And there were some really good questions, weren't there?
There were. And I think it's just one of those topics that we've all heard about. We're all perhaps a little wary about. And perhaps hopefully it will give some people a little bit of confidence to know that they can perhaps give it a try.
Well, I've got to be honest with you, since that I've started giving it a try with a few things. So, it's... it is an interesting message, or it's an interesting conversation with people that know it and use it and can see where it's going to go. So, really go take a listen. This podcast has been brought to you today by Chewing the Cud Limited, who offer completely independent dairy and beef nutrition, cow signals advice and training, along with ROMS mobility scoring. For more details on these and other services available, please visit our website www.chewingthecud.com or email us directly on nutrition@chewingthecud.com. Chewing the Cud Limited now offers first aid training from a registered first aid at work trainer and experienced minor injuries practitioner. For more details, please visit our website www.chewingthecud.com or email us directly on training@chewingthecud.com. Hello, I'm Andrew Jones.
And I'm Sarah Bolt.
And welcome to the Chewing the Cud podcast, a podcast for the UK dairy industry.
Farmer, advisor, processor, and everyone else. We have topics and episodes that will interest you.
We discuss the practical and the technical aspects of different UK dairy industry topics.
We aim to make you think about what you're doing and ask yourself, can it be done differently?
Listen to us speak with specialists from inside and outside the industry about their area of expertise.
Subscribe and listen to episodes for free on your favourite podcast platform.
Or sign up to our website www.chewingthecud.com for podcast notifications so you never miss an episode.
And links to our socials, including Instagram, Chewing the Cud Podcast. All one word, and remember, no G.
Or email us direct on podcast@chewingthecud.com.
If you like what we do, please share and leave us a review to show your support. And that's it. Enjoy today's episode.
Hello and welcome to Chewing the Cud podcast. Today, well, it's a little bit different. We've got the first of our live events.
It's quite exciting, but daunting at the same time, Andrew.
It is. It could go horribly wrong. So first thing we should do is thank UK Agri-Tech Centre. There's a nod from Mike, one of our guests, for doing that, for hosting this for us, which is fantastic. So thank you to him. Thank you to them. And thank you to Mike for agreeing with it. But anyway, so we're here today to talk about AI. Now, for most people in the dairy industry, that obviously means something else. But to catch up with the rest of the real world, it's now artificial intelligence. So should we maybe be looking at changing the term within the dairy industry? usually, my time in the Southern Hemisphere, AI was referred to as AB, artificial breeding. So do you think maybe we should be referring that in the UK as well?
Maybe it's time for a change.
Maybe it's time for a change, but old habits die hard, because let's be honest, we all still call it purple spray. And how long has it been since it was last purple spray? But anyway, that's another thing. So as many people may not realise, AI is creeping into the dairy industry all the time, and new developments coming, and some being tested here at the Southwest Dairy Development Centre. And most of us maybe think of the negatives of AI, that the world's going to be taken over by AI, dystopian future like Skynet from the Terminator. But it's with us every day. So maybe it's time we start talking about it and make people think about it. And just from my own experience, I've actually been involved in the training of some AI, but we can get onto that later. So today we have 3 guests, all who've joined us on the podcast before. So our first today is Chris Knight, who is the founder of Agribot and studied AI in the early 2000s. Now, Chris was a guest on the podcast in December 2025, talking about Agribot. And today he'll be talking about artificial intelligence, not as new as it seems. So good morning, Chris.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. Thank you for coming to Greece again. Our second guest today is Garner, who is head of R&D at Antler Bio, and he uses AI with his work at Antler Bio. Now, Ian has been a guest in the past, in September 2025, talking about epigenetics, and today is talking about harnessing AI, current uses and innovations. So good morning, Ian. How are you going?
Good morning, Andrew. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for coming back again. And finally, we have Mike Jones, who is Dairy Technical Manager for the UK Agri-Tech Centre, based here at the Southwest Dairy Development Centre. Mike's been a guest twice for us, once in May 2024, where he showed us round the site and we had a good look round. And then back in May 2025 as well, where we talked about the year anniversary of UK Agri-Tech Centre as it was then. So good morning, Mike.
Good morning. So I hope this is third time lucky that I don't stumble over my words.
You'll be fine, Mike. You're experienced, you are. So really, AI, let's start. Chris, let's start with yourself. You're going to talk to us about how it's not as new as it seems. So please tell us about some of the history about AI, because most people think it's really a very modern thing the last, 5, 6, 7 years.
Well, yeah, when people found out I studied AI back in 2000, to put a date on myself, they seem to think I'm one of the older ones doing it, but thankfully I'm not. There's even older people. Modern AI hasn't really changed since 1940, to be honest with you.
What, Turing?
So Turing's name's brought up, and I don't want to take anything from Turing, but there's actually key papers additional to his, if you're so interested in such things. William Pitts was the first one that really came, who actually decided on artificial neurons. It all stems from a very basic understanding of how our brain works. So AI is actually influenced by how our brain works. Right? It's not trying to replicate it, it's just influenced by it. I think that's the other thing people get around the wrong way. But it's a very simplistic form. And they all the way through to the ChatGPT and the things we see today, that's actually directly linked to those original papers back in 1940. Hasn't really changed much since then. Of course, it's grown in scale, and it's grown a little bit in complexion, but the bare bones, the actual bare fundamental mass of it hasn't really changed.
So what's that, 1940s? That's, 80 years. It's not massively changed in that time. Probably what the computing power has got faster or better.
There's been, in the AI field, we tend to call them AI winters. So, of course, the first AI winter was in 1940. Someone had the wonderful idea of replicating the brain from this basic understanding we had. But of course, computers weren't even a thing. Never mind computing power. Computers weren't even a thing back then. So how do we do that back? Well, it wasn't really known. And then I got more developed computers by 1950s and 60s maybe, but of course they weren't up to the task. I would argue the big AI computing thing was solved when the iteration I came through on, it was kind of basically solved at that point. What's kicked it off more recently is the data. So when I built my first AI neural network, we had picked, it was to do a classification. This would be really complicated to do now, but it was just a simple AI that would look at a picture and decide if it was male or female. But then it was accurate as a human, but back then we had the data set of 200 images, which we thought was massive data set. Of course it would be work then. But AI was always a solution looking for a problem, so it was never quite good enough, but we couldn't figure out why not. Fast forward to today, unless you've got millions of data samples, that was why. So our understanding of big data was different back then than it is now, and that's the final solution.
But what made you study it back then when it wasn't the fashionable thing?
It was just a niche thing within computer science. I mean, I started to show how sad and depressing I am. I actually started coding when I was 8. So I grew up in Scotland, cold, dark place in the winter, not a lot else to do. So then I went to university. I didn't want to do computer science because I'd already done coding and everything up then, but I needed polished off, so I wanted to do something in that area. So I thought, well, I'll do this AI thing. Sadly, I can't claim that I had the foresight as to the benefits of doing it back then. I wish I was that smart. I just lucked into it thinking, this seems interesting, I'll do that. And then most of my software career, I didn't really do AI. I was working on satellites, which is where Agribot comes from. So we use satellites to do field analysis. So my life story beyond that was Agribot's story. But then, of course, space and defense. And to further, I remember so I'm harping on a bit, but I remember going for my first job. I was in space and defense, and I first interview outside of that sector. They were like, oh, someone turned around to me and said, oh, your CV is basically the plot to Terminator.
I would laugh, but I don't know the plot to Terminator. So if there's anybody else in the room to join me.
Well, then you're not going to get this reference. And that's because I specialize in neural networks, which was a Terminator's brain. Then I thought, well, if that's just one light, what is it going for this? And then you click, I actually worked on a satellite constellation called Skynet. So weirdly, I hadn't connected the dots at that point. And then that's when I first realized that, oh, yeah. And then you said, so, I mean, does this AI thing work? And I was like, well, obviously not, because no one's come from the future to try and kill me yet. So, yeah.
But so really, you're saying in the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years, whatever it is, it's more been the data. Now, is that again because we've got more processing power to handle more data, more storage to handle more data?
Yeah, I mean, to say it's not computing power recently is a little bit cheeky. It kind of is. Like, if you had that massive data set back when I was doing it, yeah, we could have got through it, but we could have been clever about it. We could have worked our way around that computing power issue, but we just didn't have the data. So I think the big iteration. So I'm in the field in the side that there's not been new science in the AI sector since 1980. So whilst we talk about fundamentally it's from 1940, there were improvements from all the way up to 1980. But really, if you had the knowledge from 1980 to now, it wouldn't be a big step. There's no fundamental, oh my God, how have they figured that out in AI since 1980-ish? And we can go into what that is, but it's not really important. So ever since then, for my money, it's iterative steps.
So really, well, that's 45 years. So really, the last half century, you're saying there hasn't been big fundamental improvements in AI. It is simply probably processing power, storage, the ability to hold bigger data sets and work with bigger data sets.
There have been improvements. So I'm talking like new science level big steps since 1980. There have obviously been improvements and new ideas and new theories, but it's just fundamentally still based on the theories back to then.
I mean, from my point of view, is sort of the general public, as it were. I think it's the fact that it's now available to us, whereas it's obviously been available to you in the industry since the 80s in that same sort of form, as it were. Whereas it's only really the last three years, or maybe I'm a bit behind times. Blonde and over 50, it's probably taken me a while to catch up.
Google, I forgot what it's even called, the Google one now, but Alexa and Siri and all of those sorts of things that we can all use every day. ChatGPT, whatever it happens to be. Or let's be honest, the last week or two, you've had the crazes of caricatures on social media using AI. I've had someone damn that because of all the energy it's taken and wasted on things like that. But it's become more accessible. But I say that more accessible, it's taking away, you could argue, the fun things. I mean, isn't there a band in Sweden or something that's all AI generated? You could argue, well, where's the fun? It shouldn't be taking away the creativity. It should be taking away the boring things. And really, that's kind of what we're here today, is it's using data. I mean, we talk data. I mean, here we are at the Southwest Dairy Development Centre. You've got 3 Lely robots. And the amount of data that comes off those Lely robots is just huge, to the point I remember when we put the rotary in North Queensland, it was, and we went a halfway house in terms of the data. And they're like, well, unless you've got the time to sit down and look at it, you're never going to make the most of it. But I'm guessing with some of this AI, it's to take out some of that routine for you to do, or flick through this stuff a lot quicker for you.
Yeah, I mean, AI's always been there. I mean, so you talked about maybe dairy should change away from using the term AI to, you could argue, really, AI is the term we shouldn't be using, in all honesty. It's a very contentious term in and of itself. And I think the reason why it's become more prevalent recently is because we've developed large language models, so we can talk to it, we can interface with it. It was always there behind the scenes, but doing things like Agribot does. So we do AI, but not ChatGPT, the more traditional ones, which is where we take all these inputs, all these different data sources to try and make one decision. Like, one thing we're rubbish at humans is we can hold 3, maybe 4 facts into a decision. Beyond that, it gets more complicated for us. But AI can actually have all sorts of inputs into it, and it's really good at doing that. The issue is AI can have what we call width. So that's the number of variables it can make a decision from. It has terrible depth. It doesn't really think too hard about it. And that's why I think we see, whilst we think it's come on leaps and bounds recently, it's been a very slow progress to get to this point. And 2, I think that this is pretty much, and most AI people I know work with it, it's going to plateau pretty quickly from here. I think the reason people get carried away with it is because, like you said, it's coming to people's references now, so they think it's had this meteoric rise and it's come from nowhere. No. And 2, it's got if we go back to the point I made earlier, it's based on a very basic understanding on how the brain works from 1940. I mean, even to today, we barely know how the brain works. Never mind 1940, which it is based on. I mean, the evidence I can use from that is if you give me like a bowl of Weetabix and a cup of tea, I can think and do lots of computational skills from the energy I got from that. But if you imagine the massive data sets and nuclear power plants you need to power the AI models just to make a basic decision, that shows that we're fundamentally getting something wrong from an AI perspective. So that's why it has a plateau.
I did have a quote I saw the other day, how true this is. It says, a human being uses 12 watts to think, while an AI system doing the same job would need 27 billion watts to think.
Yeah, so it's obviously not where we think it is, and it's a long way off it. It's incredibly useful. So to come back to your point more focused, that's where AI is. Like, again, what we do with AI is we try and take away we hope to be taking away the tedious jobs. It was interesting. You said the interesting ones. I think AI is better at the tedious jobs no one wants to do, the boring, drudgery jobs.
Yeah, but it's being used a lot for I know we're getting a bit distracted, but being used on creative things like the caricatures, or people is creating music for people. That surely should be the human enjoyment things that we still do, and let it do the drudgery, let it do the boring data sifting.
Yeah, but I'm really, if I was to pick a sector, I'd say I'm from the software development sector. And we're the ones constantly being told that we're the first ones to go because of AI. And there's lots of good reasons for that. We make our work that we produce is a wonderful treasure trove for AI to learn from. Because we write our code and we write, beside every line, well, not everything, but we write what the code is about to do. So we say, this is what we're going to do, then we actually do it. And that's what code looks like. And AI loves that. But the thing is, the AI is not, I use AI as a productivity tool. So every software developer now has a junior software developer with them. You can say to a junior developer, like you can say to any junior position in farming as well, go and do this job. You're crazy if you don't check in on it every so often. If you just let it run amok for 3-4 days, you know how that's going to turn out. Yeah, it's the exact same thing. It's junior level position right now. So from a jobs perspective, the big question is, well, how do we get people into the career ladder if that entry level is taken away? That's the real difficult question to answer. But from a creativity perspective, can it do art? Yes. Can I do art? Yes. Is everyone going to buy my art? No. Just because they can do it doesn't mean it's of quality and it's of good standing compared to our actual professional.
Well, like you were saying that junior, we were having this discussion at home last night, really. I guess you could argue it goes back to like the 80s, where there was a lot of hoo-ha that jobs were replaced by robots in terms of, let's say, welding or whatever it happens to be. What you're saying is it's almost the same thing, and we'll evolve and adapt to work with it as a companion or a junior position to make us all more productive.
mean, yeah, the cliche argument an AI person would do to justify what we're doing is we'll say, well, we've been through the printing press. The printing press was a bigger impact on jobs than the AI will ever have. Some would argue. Same with the car. The car is another one for the horses and carts and that kind of thing. And, there's endless examples of it, but we always, something else always comes along to create jobs. I think which is a very lazy argument. I don't like using that one because it just the past isn't always an indication for the future, but it's something to ease the mind a little bit, I suppose.
I've got a question that I just wanted to ask you about, Chris. The difference between sort of artificial intelligence and machine learning, because that's often, I believe, that we refer to things as artificial intelligence when they're perhaps modeling or the like. So can you perhaps tell us a little bit more about that, please?
That's a pretty easy one. Well, I'm going to make it easy. Whether people agree with me is a different thing. But I didn't finish my point earlier when I said that actually we shouldn't be using the term AI. The one that we should be using is machine learning. That's a much better phrase to use because it is machines learning. So you give it lots of data and it learns. So one little key difference between a software developer and an AI developer is, say I'm doing a model say if I was to do the gender classification one again, if I make it as a software developer, I give it the rules. I tell it, look for this, look for that, and I actually program in the rules. If I'm doing an AI model, the thing is, an AI model can be 100, 200 lines of code, and all I'm doing is programming it how to learn. So I just say, this is the data, this is how you learn from that data, off you go. Actually, how it figures out to do what it's doing, I don't know. I don't know how it does it. And that's a big research area. AI, machine learning or neural networks, it says not explainable. So it's a black box decision maker. You give it the data, it makes a decision. Why it came to that decision, who knows? All right, that's what it's learned. So your question is a very good one, and one that we should bring up when we talk about should dairy change from AI. No, everyone should just be using machine learning, to be honest with you.
So or ML we should be referring it to us.
I should change the company's name for many reasons. But yeah, it should be Agribot ML, really, if you're going to be purist about it and proper about it. But, as a tech startup and everyone gets hyped about AI, so it's, as much of a purist as I am, you've got to play the game a little bit. And that's why everyone gets sucked into it. I think it's a good test to see if someone's serious about AI is how much they cringe when they talk about AI. They do it because we know we have to, but don't necessarily like it because it is actually machine learning.
No, that's grand. Well, looking at it's now time to move on. So we're moving on to Ian. So hello again, Ian. So Ian, you're here to talk to us basically about how you use it. I mean, Chris has spoken a little bit about how he uses it with Agribot, but I know you use it in your role with Antler Bio. But yeah, just talk us through basically how is AI used today on projects like Chris's, yourselves, or other ones out there? What is it capable of doing or not doing?
Sure. Yeah, no, I agree a lot with what Chris said. I think one of the great points Chris made was it's like having a junior developer with you at all times. So when, in a startup, Antler Bio, when we first started, there was 3 of us full time, and you wear many hats. So with, just as we started the ChatGPT, as you said, the first model came out there 2022. 2022.
Long time ago now.
It is a long time ago. It's so much has happened in that time. But it allows you to speed up development. As long as you've got guardrails in place, it's like having someone that you can bounce back ideas with. Right?
I like the fact you said guardrails in place.
Yes. So it's very important, again, as Chris said, you can, if you leave someone doing a job and you don't check in on them, it can go and do all sorts of things. And if you don't go back and check, it's very hard then to go back and find out what it's done. So if you use it in a sensible way, like not as a source of truth, but in a way to help bounce ideas, to write code, as long as you know how to write code and what it's doing, then it can be a very powerful tool, just like that. One example where we used it early on, setting up infrastructure. You might need, say, a solutions architect or an AWS cloud expert. So all our infrastructure is in what's called the cloud. So it's all online on databases and stuff like that. We had knowledge of how to do that, but with AI, it sped it up a lot. So we were able to get online a lot quicker. Especially with Antler, we sold EpiHerd, our product, to Finnish farms to start with. I don't speak a word of Finnish. Well, I speak one word of Finnish now. Moika, hello. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I'm terrible at languages. AI is a lot better at language, so a lot better at converting language. So it allowed, again, when there's only a few people in a company, when you're bootstrapped, it allows you to, write in English what you want to talk to a farmer in Finland. You can send them an email. You can convert your slide decks into Finnish. It's simple things like that, but it speeds up things so much where you don't have to go to, say, a Finnish-speaking salesperson, explain the science, get them to translate it all, and then go to farmers in Finland. You can take your English version, translate it with AI, check with the Finnish person it is okay.
I was going to say, have you ever been caught out by mistranslating?
No. It's eerily was good back then. It's very, very good now at translating language. There's a person in Finland that I've only spoken on email to in Finnish. He has no idea I'm English or doesn't speak Finnish, and they get on fine. It worked absolutely fine. So it's always good to check. You don't want to be saying horrible things to him accidentally, but no, it is very good compared to something like Google Translate, which again would have had models behind it, but it's in a different league. So that is one example.
I think I've always been quite scared to trust that, but you're saying perhaps I need to be a little more brave and give it a go.
Yeah, give it a go. If you've got friends that speak languages that you have no idea, type something and to them and see what they think. It's pretty good. Yeah, I'd have no hesitation using it at all for that. But yeah, it's just it's a small example, kind of a niche example, I guess, but it allowed that communication to break down communication. Where we really utilize AI right now in Antler, again, junior developer kind of role, so you can bounce back ideas, but also, again, like Chris said, machine learning. So a branch of AI, machine learning, you can find, or it can learn patterns that you couldn't possibly find just by yourself.
So I was going to say, how do you use it today within Antler Bio? What do you use it for?
So one piece of work we've just finished where AI was heavily used, again, with guardrails, and we had validation from vet experts, was to, when we write recommendations, we give a lot of information, but it's got to be grounded in truth. It's got to be grounded by science. So we can't just say, do this because of this, without any proof that it could possibly work. So in the literature, there's lots of studies. You can harvest knowledge from literature without AI. You can just do it with logical code. You can then, essentially what we did was, looked at all the literature out there rapidly, pulled it together, created a knowledge base of validated literature. And then from that, it's essentially what's called a retrieval augmented generation approach, a RAG-based approach, where you split all that text into basically line sentences. And then you use the AI model, so whether it be ChatGPT or Llama, whatever model you're using, to only look at that information. So it's already kind of, if you imagine like a big table, AI can take any information from that table, but with the RAG-based approach, it might just be a placemat on that table and can only focus on that.
So are you using it almost as a first level search we want everything on, I don't know, looking at a few cows out here with iodine on their backs. We want some information to do with why is iodine important for cows' health. So then you use it to search for that as the first level, and then maybe you'll go through it manually or bring someone in to go through it manually to confirm what it is.
Very similar. So we would pull the literature without AI, needing AI there. We can pull the literature all about iodine in dairy cows or other comparative species, right? You can get all that information. Then you can apply the model on top of that to kind of structure what you want to pull out of that information. So you could say like, show me all sources of iodine. What's the most common sources of iodine? And it will pull it out through that literature. What amounts per cow, like per kg are they giving? You can pull out that information. Then you can go to your trusted vets and say, right, can you check this? Is this true or not? Then you've got vet expert validation. You've got the science that's non-hallucinogenic. So hallucinogenic Some people don't like that term, but in AI, it can make up things that sound very plausible.
So yes,
So you
having
think,
hallucinations.
wow, you think that's great, but then the references attached to that are completely made up. It's a lot better now, but it's still there.
And that's, I guess, the thing people are worried about is you do hear these horror stories, and let's be honest, that's usually what you do hear is those hallucinations then AI is creating and completely off track of where it's supposed to be.
And then you recommend something that's completely not grounded by science, and then you're in a lot of trouble. So we pull out only information that's been peer reviewed, that's been validated, so it's supported by science, anything we say. And then it has the bets that might confirm that that's true. And then it's got the real references to those papers. So it's ironclad. It's very...
So pull out, say, Journal of Dairy Science or wherever it happens to be.
And you can go back to that PubMed IE and it will take you to the exact paper and it will pull out exact information that you've said.
It really worries me that it's doing my job for me. So as a knowledge exchange manager at Kingshay, I trawl through the literature, find the science, and then put that into, well, what does that mean to the dairy farmer?
But I guess what Ian's saying is, though, it does the first search for you, and then you can then determine what's there and get it done quicker. Just don't tell Richard that you're using it to get it done quicker.
Just don't make me redundant. Yeah.
You'll always need that expert validation, right? Because it can... You want to use it as a filtering tool to gather. I guess it's I'm very bad at analogies, but maps. Everyone used to know how to read a map, and then GPS came along, right? But you probably still check on the map that you're going to the right place.
I'm the old-fashioned person that still has an OS map in the car. I have got it on my phone as well. I've moved one step closer.
But yeah, I guess we move with technology. So what you're saying now is for yourself, it's more about processing. I mean, Chris mentioned data sets. It's more about processing large data sets quickly. I mean, if you didn't have this, for argument's sake, I know you've tested the cows here at Southwest Dairy Development Centre. If you had to make the recommendations without AI, how long would it have taken you to find that information to make those recommendations? Or how big a team of experts behind you would you have needed to make it happen?
Sure. It's a great question.
It's probably how long's a piece of string, a little bit.
Kind of, yes. To gather information, if you think back when I was at uni, you'd do a 6-month project on a specific area and you'd look at all the reviews, you'd filter out the poor ones or not so good ones. You'd bring all that information, you get like a set of good papers, then you'd write your review right on it. We can do that in about 30 seconds with the tools. And that's without AI. Yeah. AI just adds that level of then contextual analysis. So it gives context to what all those papers mean. And then with that RAG-based approach, you can really pull out exact sentences linked to the references, like exactly what you want. So it speeds it up orders of magnitude from that. In terms of experts, you still would have the same vets. You need vets to say that they're happy with that. Because that's what they're trained in, right? You could do it without them, but then you risk, you're not validating what you're pulling out, essentially. In terms of data sets, as again, you can do a lot without machine learning when you've got, we look at 27,000 genes. That's a lot of features. You can do a lot of analysis without any ML on that. But as you start building up your data sets, as you get a number of farms coming into that, you've got millions of feature points, right? And you've got all the phenotypic data, you've got all the metadata associated. You just can't find patterns yourself. You need learning models to then sift through all that data. And that's where now, again, there's better models being built all the time. The power, the computing, the storage, the accessibility, it's a lot better. So the infrastructure behind it.
Yeah, it can do that data sorting. Let's be honest, who likes sitting there looking at Excel spreadsheets that just go on and on and on and on? You're pulling faces as I say that. And as you say, I know you've mentioned it before that for a startup business that Antler it provided so much support that maybe financially wouldn't have been viable in the past. And it's allowed you to get to market quicker, to deal with people quicker. And it's basically looking through, and not just one level of an Excel spreadsheet, but a whole 3D model, multiple layers. It's pulling out the data for you quicker and allowing you to respond to, for argument's sake, your epigenetic tests, to then make recommendations on farm as to what you should and shouldn't do.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. And that's how we've used it. So we haven't relied on it. It's just been there to help in certain areas when it's needed. We've very the guardrails are in place. We don't let it go off on one. We make sure.
If the guardrails weren't there, what would happen?
Well, then you could end up with hallucinogenic references. You could end up with recommendations that make no sense at all, or are completely against what you should be. If you didn't have the bets then to validate it, you could be in very dangerous zone, right? You could recommend something that could have a massive detriment effect. But if you don't have the supporting science behind it, or you don't have the vets behind it, it's that kind of combination.
Yeah, you for instance, your background isn't cows. It's obviously the epigenetics and other things, but you need.
It's the same with coding. You could end up, if you just purely relied on it to code for you with no knowledge of coding, you don't know what it's done.
Yeah.
Right? You don't know what tests it's run. You don't know how it's run that data. It might have completely missed things out.
Then you're getting adverts for software that will code for you and build apps for you. But what you're saying is, who knows what it's actually doing in the background?
It's a black box, as Chris said. And if you can put the guardrails in place and it can work for you. We shouldn't turn a blind eye to it. Like AI as is now is a powerful tool. If you're using it well, correctly, it's awesome. It's great. If you don't know what you're doing, or you think it can do more than it can, it's a random guessing machine, and it's not so good.
Using Sarah's usual phrase, is what does this actually mean on farm? Is there a way farmers can use that themselves today, or is that something that the likes of yourselves or Agribot or whoever the business is are going to use to bring functionality to a product on farm? Or is there something people on farm can do today to use, I don't know, ChatGPT, PMS we're all used to? I know I used it for the first time to write the invites for this. It sounded a little bit better than what I would say. Are there, maybe I'm thinking more the data, are there ways people can use that themselves on farm today?
You can upload files to ChatGPT. You've got to be careful about that data, how it's used. They will use, if you don't specifically opt out, they might use your data into future modeling, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just something to be wary about. If you've got a base understanding of what you want to, if you've got data, then you can use those tools, but how reliable that will be,
you've got to understand what your limits are that you're putting on it, to where your focus is, rather than just going randomly off. So for argument's sake, you might want to look at a pattern as, I'm just thinking lameness off the top of my head, why particular animals are getting lame, or look through the data to filter out, is there a pattern of where it's happening, when it's happening at certain times of year, or something like that?
If you've got very well structured data, you might be able to pull out something like that. It's the nuances of, say, if you asked, has my milk yield improved since last year? Well, you can see that without AI from your data, but understanding why it may or may not have improved, that's where it's not going to be able to help you so much.
Well, most of these things are multifactorial, aren't they? So yeah.
And without that data, you need lots of data sources really to provide for that model to then say, well, your yield has improved by X% because of X, Y.
Whether it's you've improved the water, you've improved the minerals, or whatever it happens to be.
So you need that data bank. So you wouldn't just be on your data as such. But yeah, you could use it to a point. How accurate, how viable it would be, is very dependent.
Okay, well, now Sarah's doing the timekeeping as she's been asked. Don't worry, I was aware. So now it's over to Mike. Now, obviously, Mike, part of the background for the whole idea for this podcast is obviously some of the conversations you and I have had with different projects I know have come through here. The one that immediately springs to mind when we first toured here 2 years ago would have been Hoof Count, and how they were using machine learning to pick up digital dermatitis a lot quicker than we could. And I know myself, I've done a little bit of work for Hoof Count since then that's all going into that machine learning. But also, obviously, I've heard Chris speak here. I know Antler Bio have been involved here. I believe you've got, is it Chirrup AI? Is that the other one?
Yes, we got that. University.
This is all coming through. So you're here at the coalface actually seeing these products, testing these products before they've gone out to the general public or the general farming population. What's your experience with them? Where do you see them, or what projects have you seen that have been successful? Maybe some that haven't been successful you haven't told us about. But you're seeing this stuff here. How is it actually practically applying on a working farm today?
So it's the acceleration of how a product is developed that is really emphasized to me how machine learning is what we should be calling it now. Has helped everything go forward. Hoof count with their PediView system. I don't know how it has managed to interpret every cow's foot and say whether that's a healthy foot or a foot with a digital dermatitis lesion.
Well, the fact that it's picking up 2 stages quicker than probably you or I could pick it up is just phenomenal.
Yeah, and that's it. And it's human nature to be skeptical of something new. But as confidence grows within you on a product, and you become more confident in what you're seeing is actually happening there and then. Sarah said something earlier on about, it's now available to everyone on your phone, laptop. And yes, I've been using, Copilot and ChatGPT. And yes, I was skeptical at the start of it.
Well, I'm a bit of a Luddite with it still. As I say, I used ChatGPT for the first time.
When, as Ian says, you've got to give it boundaries and look after it, and don't take everything that it churns out as gospel. You still got to read it to make sure. And, my confidence has grown in using that at a farm management level. But with the projects we've got here, what goes on in the background is completely unknown to me. We've got 2 fantastic experts here today. I've learned an awful lot in the last quarter of an hour, 20 minutes on what these guys have been talking about and how it has developed. So yeah, we got to embrace it as we go forwards.
But I mean, we've mentioned it. So what have you seen from the different projects you've seen here on farm?
I'm going to think about this one. The herd vision has gone from just a camera taking body images, scans from above a cow. It's now interpreting 3D, 2D infrared images and giving a very accurate score. And it is about having the ability to crunch all that data very fast. Yeah. We can all go out and body condition score, 6 cows in front of us, and we'd all have different answers. As long as you're scoring the same in your own head, every cow, it's all right.
Well, yeah, I've often used the argument if you take body condition scoring, you almost just want too thin, too fat, just right, because the just right is you and I could do it and we'll be quarter, half a point. And some of the figures that you'd mentioned, herd vision there, we couldn't, was it 0.14 of a drop or, we couldn't physically score that ourselves. It would be impossible.
No, and that's it. And, having a machine that is able to deliver that accurate of detail makes the herd manager's, farm manager's job easier in making those informed decisions going forward.
Because again, it's sifting through that information, presenting you that information without you having to physically, for argument's sake, go through that Excel spreadsheet after somebody's condition scored them for you or whatever it happens to be.
No, I'm not a person, I can use a spreadsheet, but not to how, someone who's really trained in spreadsheets can use it. And to go through a list of cows on a spreadsheet and just pick them out, it'd take me, a couple of hours to do that. Some of this equipment that we've got here, it does it instantly. And it's on your phone, it's factual, and it's only flagging up the cows that require attention. It's able to filter out with parameters, with the guidelines on right, we need to go and look at number 4, number 6, 7, 8, and 9, and 100. We're not too worried about them today. They're fine in that parameter.
But the time saved in all of that, it's not just the time you looking at the data, it's the time of actually collecting that data of body condition scoring. Doing that for a whole herd, it's 2 or 3 hours each time, isn't it?
You're worried about your job's putting me out of one. I condition score for a couple of clients, not a lot, but I do. But you say, I'm thinking one got robot herd. By the time you go around and see them all, probably 2-3 hours for a similar size herd, and this time actually gone and found them all and everything. So yeah, it's saving that time, and then I usually type it up for them and then put some basic, if it's above, I don't know, 3.25 and below maybe 2.25 or something like that, I'll highlight them. I can't remember what figures I use exactly. But yeah, you're
doing that on a daily basis. There's no farmer that has time to be able to do that on a daily basis, or even, I'm guessing it's even more than a daily basis every time that cow walks under that camera.
Yeah, the stockman eyes will look over every cow that he walks past every day. As herds get bigger, he hasn't got time to look at everything. And I've learned, I was a Luddite when I first started using activity monitors 20 years ago. And he thought, yeah, the salesman sold. Here's a good story here. I won't believe this.
You used to sell them yourself. It's when I first met you.
And, within 6 weeks, I was thinking, hang on a minute, we're getting cows in calf that we are not seeing actually showing signs of estrus. So I learned to embrace technology because it made me a better stockman. And I think that's where, a lot of these technologies, they're still under development. They're really practical now. They've got a return on investment. So they will be successful in the marketplace.
But you're saying that it always makes me think back to a farmer relatively local to me. He made a comment from the Southwest Dairy event a couple of years ago, same sort of age as me. And he said, this technology is great now. And he said, it's not like you or I, been around cows all our life. Usually we started with smaller herds, whereas now the youngsters coming in, he said, we're coming into bigger herds, don't have that experience, and it's just another tool. It helps them, I don't know, monitor those calves in terms of, are they eating when they're supposed to, if you've got a robot calf feeder, or temperatures, or like the cows, are they coming up when they're supposed to, and all these sorts of things. It's like both Chris and Ian have said, it's like a junior apprentice then on farm. It's doing all that running around for you, doing those little jobs for you to then sift that information and go, well, actually, this calf hasn't come up and fed when it's supposed to, sets an alarm off, or the condition score has been left. And in bigger herds, it's easier to miss some of those animals maybe.
Yeah, it definitely is. And this is where you do have a friend in your pocket with you, with all the technology you've got. Everything's now is on a phone. And, you when I've, been using Copilot, it does treat you as a friend. It tries to buy you in. And, so you do have to, rein it back in every now and again. But, we are getting, the stockman has to look after more and more animals, and technology, artificial intelligence, and machine learning, they're making everything more practical, more efficient.
I'd say possibly more consistent as well, because like we're talking about condition scoring, but I know, like I say, I mentioned I've mobility scored a herd for hoof count since I been up here and obviously talked to Anthony and whatever. And I know off the back of that, every one thing that I put down as a 2 or a 3, it was a 600 cow herd. Everything that was put down as a 2 or a 3, they were then going to find that 8-second video and pick it up to then teach the machine learn that I, as a mobility score, and it wasn't just me, others were saying that was a lame cow, to ultimately teach it that was a lame cow. And then it could mobility score literally every time those cows walk through the hoof count and go, well, this cow's lame, flag up an alarm, this cow's lame, probably before maybe you'd realise yourself. Brings more consistency to it, because again, like the body condition scoring, there might be an argument, well, is that a 1 or is that a 2 on the mobility scoring? Is she coming late? It will bring a consistency to it, not just, oh, you're having a good day or a bad day in terms of how you refer to that score.
Yeah, consistency is what we're seeing now with everything going forwards. And, I think we're only really touching on where machine learning, artificial intelligence is taking us. We've had 2 fantastic speakers here this morning, and, with the Agribot and Antler Bio on what their companies are doing and embracing it and taking the decision process on a lot faster to become more efficient in the farmer's job. But, we got the likes of the Remedy just coming out. I'm still trying to get my head around it, but being able to predict what cows are going to be more susceptible to Yonis in the future.
So Remedy, do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
So it's a new tool that's been developed by Andrew Bradley and Nottingham University, looking at Yonis scores. And I'm still trying to get my head around it, but it's able to predict what cows will succumb to Yonis in the future with a percentage of, whether it is going to go or not. And this is where, from my point of view, machine learning will take us in when data sets can be joined up onto one platform. And then the decision-making process of predicting the future becomes more, I'll be more confident in where that's going. Agribot, you're able to hopefully predict crop yield of, grass, what it's going to be in the field for the cows in 10 days' time. Predicting the future using machine learning. I think that's, where we're just really touching on the surface of where we're going with all this.
So, Mike, you've touched on a couple of things that you've got here at the Dairy Centre that use machine learning or AI. Can you just perhaps talk a little bit more about a few more of them? So you mentioned Chirrup. Can you tell us what it is and what it does?
So Chirrup, that's part of our biodiversity projects. So it's a device that sits outside in the hedgerow listening for bird song.
Is it insects as well, or just birds?
That's just birds. There are other devices, other companies that are looking for insect noise. I recently came across one that you put in the ground and listens to the noises in the ground of invertebrates and things, telling you how healthy your soil is. So Chirrup, it will pick up bird song, but it's then able to identify what bird it is and the number of times it picks up that particular bird. It gives you, a benchmark on, how many different types of birds you've got with different bird species. We can all look out the window and we can see the odd crow, and there'll be some sparrows flying around and possibly the odd starling as we're near the Somerset levels. But when we've actually looked at the data, it's come back with over 30 different species of birds.
I suppose historically you probably need an ecologist to sit there for a month or two to get that. Whereas now, let's be honest, some milk contracts are now being driven by what level of birds you've got or whatever it happens to be. This is doing the job for you, I guess.
Well, it is. And it's doing it more accurately. I like looking at birds. I've got a bird table at home and we get a lot of chaffinches and goldfinches. But the Chirrup device that we've got here at work, when we've put it out in the fields, it's picked up goldcrests, wheatears, all sorts of other birds. Not going to enhance the farmer's bottom line at this moment in time, but it's giving us a benchmark of where we are at a moment in time, which, we couldn't do beforehand.
And how about anything else that you've got here that uses AI that you can share with us?
So we've got a Miraco methane laser that's detecting methane emissions being blown out of this barn from the 200 cow herd here. So, that is bringing in weather patterns, detecting a specialized, gas, and interpreting how much methane is being blown out of this shed. we're averaging, so they tell me, 2 kilograms of methane per hour, which is, 24 kilos a day.
Is that good or bad? Do we know?
Well, and that's
and
the
we
thing.
don't know, do we? So
No,
it's more data.
And we can now say, well, this is where we are today. It's a starting point. What I'd love to be able to do is put methane detectors inside the building to get a more accurate individual cow score. But it's getting everything in place and then the data joined up to take it forwards. And then we've got to be confident in what the data's producing,
But again, I suppose you could say that's where the AI machine learning comes in, is projects like that, if they've been done in the past, would have then taken a year or two probably to sift through all the data to give you that data, whereas this is probably giving it to you in real time.
And that's it. And real time is one of the important things. We all want to know what's happening now, not what happened 6 months ago. 6 months ago, yes, we can learn from historic data, but we have to react to things happening now.
Well, Sarah's now going to run around with the mic. Does anybody have a question they particularly like to start with, or?
Here's my question for all of you guys. If we held this same event in 5 years' time, what do you think would be normal on a dairy farm that still sounds really advanced today from a point of view of AI?
I think what Mike spoke about, Remedy, with detecting yonis before it happens or early. I think that's exactly where Antler are positioned as well, but with gene expression. So you could say, like, if you can predict something happening before it happens, you'll save a lot of money there, and you do need that past data to be able to build that model. But
well, that just made me think, what level of predictability or probability, maybe is the question, is acceptable in something like that? Does it have to be 80%? I mean, I guess it's a bit like, I'm just thinking the genes. Was it parent average was less than 50%? Was it? I can't remember what it was. And now with genomic data, it's pushed up and up and up. So what level, in AI in general, what level of probability is considered acceptable that that's where you're expecting to go? Well, Chris, we'll bring you in on this one when Ian's done. But I mean, you obviously must use that for predicting what your grass growth is going to be in the next 10 days, fortnight, whatever it is. There's got to be a level of probability. At what level do you go, this is when that level of probability is acceptable? That's what we think will happen.
Well, for us, it's a difficult one to answer exactly, because I guess each different thing will require maybe a different probability. If something's impossible to predict right now, but in the future you could get 70% accuracy, that's a big improvement, right? If you can get 99 as close to 1, then you've got the perfect predicting model.
But that's what you could argue. Some people are going to say that's always going to be your argument, isn't it? Oh, well, it's only 80% probable, then why should I therefore believe it?
Well, it's 80. If it's take 80% as an example, 80% of the time you get it right. 8 in 10 cows, you stop them developing yonis, or you stop them developing mastitis. That's a huge benefit, right? If you can predict that early on.
I guess with each farm, that is going to be slightly different, because if yonis is a huge problem on a particular farm, you don't want to be culling absolutely everything, but actually you're then going to say, actually, I need a higher percentage of probability for that farm than actually if I've got a farm where incidence of yonis or mastitis or whatever is way lower, actually I'll take a lower probability.
Well, accuracy for me is always an interesting topic. We've discussed it a few times, so I'm going to repeat myself for you, sadly. But like as mentioned, we use satellites to measure grass growth, how it is today, trying to save Mike from, I don't know if he enjoys it or not, but hopefully we're saving you from a job.
It keeps the stick count.
Well, as I say, I used to plate walk with someone. I used to say, I'm getting paid to do my weekly exercise. So,
It's fine on a dry day.
Well, from that side, we're an extra opinion on it, at least. But I think there's a few things I want to. First one is, that's, as someone was talking about consistency, that's exactly what we try and do. But from a grass growth perspective, because if you go out there with plate measure reading, you can do it 3 times a day and probably get 5 different values. And that's just the same person, or maybe it's multiple. And so with Agribot, we try and measure grass bit consistency constantly. We just try and always be the same way of measuring every time. Which brings us to the accuracy question. The thing about accuracy from a grass growth perspective, in general, is that percentage of what? Like, so one pushback I got from early is there's lots of academic studies trying to use satellites to measure grass growth before, but they were never quite accurate enough.
Well, I remember in our podcast, I mentioned, is it like Southern Hemisphere have had sort of grass growth from satellite for 10 years or whatever. And I've always sat there thinking, well, why haven't we got it here? And then obviously you explain cloud cover and whatever. But yes, it's not something new, you could argue, in the wider industry.
Right. But I suppose we've taken a different view. Is the reason why it was never deemed as very accurate was because the ground truth was plate measure readings. So which has its own problems. So they'd be trying to correlate what the satellite, because satellites don't measure grass. They measure what they measure, and we turn that into grass growth.
Well, yeah, it used to be chlorophyll density, I think the Southern Hemisphere used, but not here. It doesn't work, does it?
That's optical, so that's NDVI. But of course, that's affected by cloud cover, whereas we use radar, and that's a different thing. We can go into depth if you want, but I was trying to avoid it. But the issue there is they're then trying to correlate what the satellite measures with grass growth, but that grass growth was plate measure readings, which is fundamentally wrong as well. But from a science or AI perspective, that was the ground truth. So therefore, it was never accurate because while your accuracy is measured against something that isn't accurate. Therefore, you get this whole debacle. So the way we treat Agribot is we don't talk about accuracy. We sort of take a fear of maths geek. We sort of use Bayesian. So we try to understand the error of what we're doing rather than the accuracy. We know roughly how wrong plate measure readings are. We know roughly how wrong the satellites are. We know roughly how wrong everything is. And we come at it from that perspective. But even then, we'll come back to the whole argument is we're just trying to be consistent. So even if we know how wrong we are, but we know how consistent we are.
Oh, you're consistently wrong.
Well, that's the phrase. It's just like all models are wrong, but some are useful. That's the good AI phrase to use. But like Mike touched on earlier, you can get different people looking at different cows, right? And then you can get different opinion, which is great if you've got the same person out there every day doing the same thing. But that never happens. So if you get someone else has to do it one day, well, that whole thing's ruined. So I would argue consistency, of course, to a point, but consistency is more important than accuracy because you'll bake that in. Because if you're wrong by the same amount every time, that gets shadowed by the fact where you just react to it the same way because your action is consistent to what you're measuring. So whether it's puristically correct. But then to go into a bit more, we often then, with the long-range weather, we'll measure our accuracy on perfect forecasts. So with our grass growth models, they're about 95% accurate 4 weeks in advance. But that's assuming perfect forecasting, which is, there's a whole thing on that. We don't do weather forecasts 4 weeks. We do atmospheric forecasts, which is a whole different thing. It's a lot more accurate.
Most people, my generation, would probably say, "Oh, the weather forecasting's got worse, not better." Despite the fact we've got all these supercomputers in there now.
I would agree with them, but I'm not a weatherman. I'm an atmospheric forecast. I'm an atmospheric forecaster, not a weather forecaster. They're very different things, and very different ways. So again, with the accuracy, we'll essentially we're 95% accurate 4 weeks out with perfect conditions, perfect forecasting. So even, I don't know, I battle within myself talking about accuracy because I do like to keep things simple. But then whenever you talk about accuracy, my little brain goes on, it's a little bit false advertising if you just give a percentage because there's all sorts of caveats with that. And then, I struggle with how do we convey that from a message perspective because someone just wants a nice number, but then it's not quite fair and accurate either in anyone. Consistency for us and error is more important than accuracy.
But I guess, Mike, you're poised. You're dealing with this all the time. What do you see happening in 5 years that at the moment seems a bit, science fiction, I guess, because you are seeing this stuff like the methane monitors and those sorts of things. Are we going to see more of that moving forward?
We're still going to be milking cows in 5 years' time. You'll still have a lot of livestock around, which is fantastic. We're going to have healthier livestock. We're probably going to have cows that produce less methane per litre of milk produced. With Antler Bio, the confidence that I will have in their process will gain traction. Being able to take data and predict what that cow is going to do, and by change some of the interventions that go with her, that cow will become more efficient. And it is about, taking everything to the next level. Every cow here has got a Smax-Tex bolus in, and we know how much water she's drinking, what her body temperature is. And when parameters for those individual cows reach certain areas, it will flag her up as a cow that needs attention. And we're going to have more stuff, more technology joining up with other technology on single platforms where they're able to predict what that cow is going to do, not just tomorrow, but in a week's time, in 2 weeks' time. And she will be a healthier, more profitable cow.
And I think it's that health and welfare thing that is so important, that all this technology, whether that's machine learning, AI technology that's behind it, I think we're going to have that healthier, higher welfare standard animals on our farms.
Certainly second that again. I think it's a healthier, like we mentioned earlier, whether it's the body condition scoring, it's going to be, it's that junior to pick up the problems quicker, whether that's body condition or lameness or not drinking or not eating as they should do. This stuff will just pick it all up quicker. I mean, I remember a few people, some of the early, was it ear tags that monitored calf temperature, and that was just like, oh, well, it's telling us the calf's sick before the calf even knows it's sick, and it's just going to be more of that, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I think the phrase that we're trying to do is we're trying to, in our little corner, make farming or dairy proactive rather than reactive. Like with weather's a limiter. If your models are based on 3 days, you're reactive. And there's all sorts of problems with that. But if you give 2 weeks, 3 weeks heads up, there's a lot you can do with that and a lot you can prepare and make things more efficient.
To take the summer we had last year, if you knew that was coming, you can predict, you could plan earlier in terms of where your forages are, what your feed budgets need to be, or whatever it happens to do.
So we've got a question from our audience, not quite confident enough to read it out themselves, so I'm going to do that for them. So have we got an idea as to sort of how many farms are really using AI or machine learning already, and to what extent? And then sort of a follow-on question from that, how can we increase its responsible use?
I can do the second one. I don't know. I don't know the first one. But I think it kind of touches on what do you think in 5 years. I don't know 5 years, but I know what I would like to do in 5 years, and that's less apps in the pockets of people. So a more
unified.
Yeah, consistent again, unified and in one place, because all these bits of data are great, are useful separately, but if they were collected in the same area,
that they need to talk to each other.
How do we get this cooperation within a commercial industry? That's my big question.
Well, I would like to think we're the good chaps on that one. All our data is available for any other company to integrate with. In fact, we're trying our hardest not to make another farm management app. We really don't want to make another farm management app. We want to integrate into others, but that depends on other people playing nicely.
That sounds like the way to go, definitely.
Come on, Mike, you deal with all these different people. How do you make them all talk to each other and make something happen together? Not putting you under pressure, of course.
That is the $6 million question. Companies are data is a valuable commodity, and it all has a price on how it could be used. Subconsciously, I think everybody is already using AI, machine learning. We don't realize it. And, I did go to a meeting last year where the main speaker said AI is the new electricity. And I thought about that for a while. I had to agree with him, because when electricity was first brought into our world, it was, that's a bit scary. But how many things could not happen without electricity today? None of us would be here in this room if we didn't have electricity. And going forwards, anybody that doesn't embrace artificial intelligence and machine learning will fall by the wayside.
You're probably right. We are subconsciously all using it, whether we do or don't. I mean, let's be honest, since the beginning of season 4, I've now started to use AI to do the description for the podcast, because it's just easier than me sitting there, and it does a lot better job. Admittedly, it's longer and probably doesn't have a particular slant in its head that I'm thinking of. So we are all slowly creeping in there, whether we like it or not.
I think it's a difficult way to think with AI. So how do I use AI? I think the equivalent is, I've just bought a new chainsaw. What can I use it for? It's probably a dangerous line of thoughts to go down. So you should be thinking more about problems. I think if you know you're using AI, I try our hardest to sell what we do without using the word AI. To be honest with you, it's like we do grass growth.
It's the tool for grass growth. It just happens to have AI in the background.
Right. Being my background, the number of times I get people call me, Chris, how do we use AI? What do we use AI for? I said, well, you've started the journey of a bad decision there.
It just happens to be part of the tool rather than the other way around.
What problem do you have? And then we can talk about maybe if AI is the right thing for it, rather than, again, it's like asking a plumber to turn up and saying, fix this using this hammer.
Yeah, Ben Richards. This is probably better for Chris, I would have thought. Albert Einstein once said, technology will one day breed a generation of idiots. I personally feel he's 100% correct with the existing generation. How do you feel going forward? Is AI going to continue to degrade the intelligence of the population, or is it going to actually improve the intelligence of the population?
Well, I think it's difficult. I agree with the question. First of all, is it AI that's going to do it? Potentially. I mean, I've got down my notes. The difference is, so we use AI in different ways. I use ChatGPT, and I use this to do my software development, right? But when you talk about Agribot, we don't use ChatGPT. We have our own AI models that do different things. But I see myself doing it. Like the number of times I've been trying to fix a problem, trying to bully AI into telling me it's the solution. When really, I spent 4 or 5 hours trying to get AI to fix it for me, when really it would take me 5 minutes. Yeah, right. So I've caught myself in that trap. So, but that's what it is. It's a trap. But then we talked about guardrails earlier. Like we need guardrails around how we use AI as well. It's just so easy.
AI or not, that some people need guardrails.
Yeah, well, it's just so easy to get. Yes, to rely on something and too much. But I think there's other traps. If you're an employer, you can hire juniors and get trapped trusting them too much as well. So I don't think AI is a special case if you look in other ones. But yeah, it's a good point and a good question, potentially. I'm not going to disagree with you, but I think I would push back on my earlier point, and AI, you'll notice that AI probably, and I don't do future gazing, but I'm pretty confident enough to say that AI is going to plateau for quite a while. And you can see from a startup perspective, there's a massive bubble. There always is in these new techs. There's always a bubble of new tech. AI's, I think, is particularly overgrown financially, but also expectation-wise. I think there's a massive financial correction coming because of all these oversaturated valuations that AI companies get. I do VC due diligence, and one of the reasons that for VCs, are venture capitalists, so these investors, and part of my job is just to go and prove that company isn't AI, so they don't have to pay as much for the company, which isn't as hard as it's actually quite easy, to be honest with you, with that. So yeah, I think AI is overhyped financially and what it's going to do. But over a 50-year period, I don't know, maybe. But no, it's not an immediate concern. I as a software developer, constantly being told I'm being replaced. I don't see it and I don't believe it. And I think I'll be replaced before anyone else in this room. And so I'm
I suppose another example, or we're talking about AI, I suppose, is the internet. I mean, I remember hearing about the internet when I was, probably my kid's age. It was just that thing, and you email and you're like, oh, wow. And now, I mean, I remember probably 10 years ago sitting down with my nephew and his cousins and going, I remember playing with no internet. And they're like, what? No internet? How did you do it? Or when my youngest was born, the oldest was given the phone, and because we were out from home, we turned off the Wi-Fi, and his first reaction, there's his brother, and it was, my Netflix doesn't work, because he was more interested in that. And yet, like Mike was saying about AI is new electricity, almost the internet's the new electricity, isn't it? Really, it's become a stage, if you haven't got the internet, then you almost look to second class.
Well, but you could view AI in a different way. So everyone's smarter and a little bit dumber because of the internet, right? We can say it has a duality about it. AI is just the same thing. AI is just Google on steroids in a certain way. Whilst all the information is on the internet, good luck finding it. But AI is a shortcut way. So Google was particularly worried about AI because that makes Google.com redundant now. Like, Google's use case is going skyrocketing down because everyone just goes to ChatGPT as the new search engine or the way I get the truth from. So I think I think it's just that, from that sense, from a large language model, ChatGPT and whatnot, it's just replacing Google and the search engines. And I think it'll be an extension of you'll be smarter and dumber.
Jim Juby, I've got a question on trust. So we're part of a corporation and we're not allowed to use a lot of the AI that's public domain by our company, which for various reasons. How do you get over that trust thing with, a lot of farmers, Ben clearly had a bit of cynicism towards it. How do you get past that trust thing where you're getting, you're starting off with raw data, you're analysing it, you're coming up with a solution, and the middle is a black hole to most people. If you're making a thought pattern yourself, you tend to work through a process, you understand that process, but obviously, you're not expecting, but you're getting an end result. How do you get past that stage where you just people will accept that? Is that a problem that you come up against, or
You know what? I'm happy to answer, but
I'll give a little answer. So I think it's a very important point. I think in a lot of the models you can turn off whether your data is used in that model. So that's one good thing. But then you're still never, you're never sure, right? I think with the data we handle, we never put it into AI. We have our own servers, we run our own machine learning model, so it never goes outside of where we tell it can go. But I think it's an important point. Trust, it needs to be built. You don't want your own personal details getting out there. But I think as long as you're responsible with that data, there's lots of GDPR, right? You wouldn't want to just give away raw data into a language model and not know what would happen with it. You don't want other people analyzing that. You want to trust the company that you've given that data to look after it securely. So
that is something, is it? The one that music speaks to mind. Is it Scarlett Johansson was asked to be the voice for an AI, refused, and now she's taken them to court because basically they've gone and copied her voice using AI.
It's the same with Matthew McConaughey, right? He's patented his voice now or trademarked his voice, so he can't, if someone does use it, at least he earns money from it.
Maybe I should be doing that a bit quick.
Hey, you have a good voice, so... But yeah, I'll let Chris answer.
No, I'm actually quite liberal. I've got a little tin hat on. So, my formative years as a software developer were in defense. So occasionally that jumps out at me a little bit. But in the main, I don't want to go as far as saying I don't care, but I come from a cybersecurity background as well, for instance. Like if people can get overprotective and not protective enough to be a dichotomy again. If I've got, not that I've used that, but I've got a Facebook account. If someone hacks into my Facebook account, it's annoying, but so what? Well done. What are you going to do with that? Not a lot. I'd rather you didn't, but whatever. And it's the same with data. Okay, I give data the ChatGPTs and all that kind of stuff, maybe more than I should, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's unfortunate if they use it against me. It's not problematic. So I tend to think about how could they use this against me? And if it's annoying, I get more benefit than not to take that risk. But would I upload anything? Not that I do anything. If I were to do anything that could possibly be considered illegal, would I give that to ChatGPT if it could be used as evidence? No, I wouldn't. But would I give it some data that, whatever? Yeah, I don't really care. Because so many people use it, they're not going to use it against you. Millions of people use it. They don't really care about you, to be honest with you. So
not as the individual. They just want the block data maybe to work out averages or the...
Yeah. And again, I'd rather not. But what's the benefit I get from doing it? That's the thing. That's the calculation I do. So there's a risk doing it, but my benefit outweighs that risk. So whatever, I'm going to...
Is it no different the fact we all carry phones around with us? And I expect ultimately they can track us wherever we go because we've got a phone in our pocket.
I think this is a different podcast.
Yeah, fair enough.
Happy to get my tin hat on. I love a bit of that, but I'm not sure.
But just trying to use an example we're all used to doing now anyway. We don't think about the fact that we have a phone in our pockets that ultimately can track where we are. Your phone's a problem. Text messages are more susceptible than anyone would ever want to realize. So during the authentication, don't use text messages. For God's sake, never trust a text message either if you want tin hat on. But yeah, there's big, to take a more rounded point, there's bigger risks in your life than what you give ChatGPT. But, don't give out something that could use as evidence against you. That'd be my point.
Hi guys, Andy Lessie. So you kind of inclinated that it's not actually intelligence and it's more artificial capacity that you're essentially getting. You're getting something that gives you massive output, but is very naive, needs guardrails. So what jobs shouldn't it do? And is there ever a time where Andrew, Sarah, and Mike are going to be replaced by a digital interface?
Well, if you want to pay me for my patented rights, I think it was just mentioned, and I can retire on it, then, crack on.
Just imagine the intelligence that could come from this voice.
It can only go downhill from here, can't it? Sorry, anyway, to who wants to reply to Andy's?
What jobs won't be replaced? I think my wife's a teacher. I don't think AI will ever replace teaching.
It's going to be the physical. Surely someone on farm, unless you suddenly got what's his name, Elon Musk trying to make his robots or whatever. Somebody's still got to be on farm doing the stock work, the day-to-day work. It's the data handling. By the sound, from what you guys are saying, it's the data handling is what it does rather than the physical.
Yes, it's also the trust as well, right? Like you've alluded to. Would you trust an AI robot to put out a fire or to catch a criminal or to teach your children?
Well, I think I've seen a video of one trying to load a dishwasher or something, and it was hysterical. The plates were just ending up all over the place.
But would I trust equally? Would I trust AI to fully code data analysis? I wouldn't right now. In the future, like we're talking again, I don't. It's the guardrails. It's a tool to be used to empower certain people. I think it goes back to the question about will it make people smarter, or it is exactly like Chris said. It's duality. It's we will lose critical thinking. Other people will gain empowerment and be able to self-learn and learn so much more with it.
Well, I guess I'm thinking my kids are doing stuff at school that we probably didn't do till secondary school, but they're doing it now. But on the flip side, there's probably things that they don't know that we did know, or I suppose we talked about electricity. If electricity went tomorrow and we all had to do things again the old way, most people wouldn't have a clue where to start with. They've lost those practical skills because they're being done for them by electricity or whatever it happens to be.
I guess it's how people use it. You could use it to help develop your own ideas. You could use it to take away all your ideas and you become numb almost. So it's how you as a person choose to use AI, right? If you use it in a sensible, ethical, smart way, it can empower you. It can make you it can help, right? If you just use it and rely on it blindly, it will reduce your critical thinking ability. You won't be able to analyze data. There's a great example in games, probably another podcast. But back when I was a kid, games used to challenge you. They used to, you didn't just endlessly mine something and you'd have to. It was lots of jumping puzzles. Like you'd have to put a lot of effort in to complete the level, and you'd learn how to defeat the level. Now it's just like, well, you can pay your way through if you can't do it, and you don't develop those skills. So it's down to the person.
Peter Megers, funny enough, last night, my other half and I watched the new series with Hannah Fry, talking about interaction of AI and people. And as you say, you're talking about critical thinking. Use the example of the young man that tried to kill the Queen with the crossbow. And he just got lost in, I can't remember what the AI model was, but he just got lost in it, and it just became an echo chamber, and it just went round and round, and he effectively lost his critical thinking, and he ended up with a psychosis. But that's, how to say, a whole nother podcast about the morality maybe, but we're trying to show that, this stuff's coming and there are positives from it, and it's like everything, it can be used the wrong way.
Well, AI models have great knowledge, but they have awful wisdom. And because what they're trying to do is, what they're working is, if you give it a question, say it's 10 words, they're using those 10 words to statistically guess what the next word is.
Well, yeah, you mentioned, was it large
language models? So that's ChatGPT.
Because she explained it yesterday, on what I was watching last night.
So it's just using its knowledge to guess the next word. And then once it guesses the next word, it guesses the next word, and so on and so forth. So that's the example of knowledge. But of course, it's not an example of wisdom, because it knows everything, but it has zero wisdom because it's just guessing your next word. So you can almost categorize it as a confidence con. And that's where hallucinations come from. I always equate LLMs to like your good mate down the pub. 9 facts out of 10, he'll say confidently and are right. But there's one he'll say he has no idea about, but he's delivered in such a confident way. You're like, okay, yeah.
Especially if he's had one or two and the confidence is there. Yeah.
And that's exactly what it is. But that's where it's come from, because it's just guessing. It's confidently guessing. I'm 100% sure that this is the next word, whether or not that next word is right or not. And one job it should never do in the short term, should never be a decision maker. They're amazing advisors. Never let it be a decision maker, right? For any even in the next 5-10 years.
Mike?
Human interaction with each other is a priority. We would all be lost if we weren't able to communicate and see and touch other humans. Artificial intelligence and, using Copilot, it can be addictive. And that's why, guardrails need to be put in place. There's a big debate at the minute whether smartphones should be in schools and kids and everything. How the hell are they going to stop that with, using Copilot or, using these artificial intelligence learning machines will be taught in schools eventually, just so you can put boundaries.
Well, I remember when we did the podcast down at Cannington College, and they said it's changed so much now. Everyone's got the phone in their pocket that kids will literally challenge them then and there in a way you didn't before, because you just had to go to the library, go through the books, whereas they can just literally pull it up then and there. It's like, okay, so they've had to change their teaching methods because the challenge can almost come back instantly, and they've got to go, okay, fine, let's go down that rabbit hole and find out what you're saying is or isn't or whatever it is. It has changed things. And you're right with it's the interaction. And just as a classic example, doing the podcasts in person are so much better than doing them virtually. We do some virtually. I mean, we've done one with Chris, we've done one with you, and we've done the second one with you, Mike, virtually. We can do it, but it's not the same. It's like here, I can see Sarah holding her mic up. She wants to speak, whereas you just don't get that. It's seeing those little subtleties that make the difference.
Definitely, it's that human behaviour that just isn't there in that AI model. I've got a question. So what is the most impressive real-world example of AI you've seen? And can we make that applicable on farm at all?
That's a good question.
I mean, I would say ChatGPT and Copilot. Like, from a purist AI perspective, they're amazing. I've just hated on them for the last hour, rather, but they are amazing. They truly are, and I think it came up earlier how farmers can use them. I'm going to put ourselves out of business a little bit. One good example is just give it the data you've got. Like, so some people can be overprotective with their yield data. If you've got yield data or weather data, give it to the ChatGPT and see if it can do correlations. You'll get a very rough. You'll get a somewhat of a useful. Again, all models are wrong, but some are useful. I think you get some use out of it, and it would be able to do the correlations between your weather data, your yield data, or whatnot. They're good pattern recognizers. So if you can give it useful data that you think there's a pattern between, give it to the ChatGPTs and LLMs. They are good enough to spot that kind of stuff. So if you've got large historical data, you can't. I mean, it's a bit meta, but we are using AI to make AI now, and that's a good example of it. You're giving AI model data to then make its own AI model to do your bidding.
So in that situation, if we're a little bit scared, can we put it into like temporary non-modes of putting it out there into the big wide world on sort of things like ChatGPT and Copilot?
That's a legal question. I'm going to go out and say check the terms of service, but I'm pretty sure that ChatGPT have a box you can tick somewhere. Yes, but again, I'll go back to my next point. Okay, yes, I'm not going to say it's not valuable data, but ultimately, how are they going to use it against you? And the potential upside of giving that data outweighs what risk is for you all to decide for yourselves. But I'd really ask, what's the benefit versus that risk, and make a decision from it. I suspect give it the data because there's a potential really good upside on it.
I'll just add to that. I think yes, you can give it data. It comes back to consistency as well, though, right? When those models update, you don't know exactly what's changed. So you might give that data 1 month, a new model might come out. You give the data the same thing, and it analyzes it a completely different way. So it's a great kind of screening tool. But I wouldn't rely on it to be reproducible unless you set up, again, guardrails. You can set up agents that will run through exactly how you want to do it. But yeah, you give data to different models. Even you give it to ChatGPT, you give it to Gemini, it will give you slightly different interpretations. It'll hopefully get the maths right every time, but it might give you slightly different answers to your questions. So it's
like, I suppose, asking two people. They might have the same data,
because they're all trained on different data, right? They're all doing very similar things, but their data sets that they're trained on are different.
So it's their slant on.
Yeah, exactly. It's why some are really good at coding, like Claude is really good at coding. ChatGPT is really good at coding, but Gemini and perhaps Copilot that are different things.
Mike, do you want to add?
But I'm just going to say, from a low level point of view, actual practical applications that I'm currently using, I've just updated a lot of risk assessments, and I learned to ask the right questions or put the right questions into Copilot, ChatGPT. And as long as you gave it those guardrails and you didn't just print it off and put it in a file, you read what it was churning out, because you then have to edit it and everything. It has really helped in putting standard operating procedures written down in a format that is a lot of people can buy into.
So what you're saying is a bit like searching something on Google, in the sense of you have to know how to ask those questions to get what you're wanting out of it. Because, I mean, let's be honest, you could search something on Google, and if you don't ask it quite the right way, you won't get quite the data you're looking for.
Yeah, exactly. And learning what questions to ask it, they're the guardrails that you have to put in place.
Question from myself, I think in some ways you've kind of already answered it, but how do you think AI will affect farm management moving forward?
Writing risk assessments was a lot easier. It is going to give greater focus on time efficiency and being able to get standard jobs written out in standard procedures so that a whole team know what they're doing with it.
And it sounds like also tracking data, maybe tracking markets as to when might be the right time to buy or sell, or...
Yeah,
Agribot's program, they will be able to hopefully predict what countries are going to have fantastic yields of maybe wheat, and other countries might be a bit short. When to sell a farm's wheat, whether it's straight off the combine or whether they go and put it in storage for 6 months. Hopefully that gives a better chance of maximizing the return of profit.
So it sounds like it's like everything. It's just speeding up maybe some of that decision making. From what we've already said, it's sifting through that data quicker, presenting you with the options to then go and make the decision.
Exactly.
Either of you two want to add on to that one at all?
Just look, I think, like we talked about there, like one thing I try and keep in mind with ours is that, farmers are commodity traders as well, of course. So, of course, what we produce, commodity traders are interested, but farmers they're asked the same questions as farmers, just in a very different way. So I think what AI would do on that point is it's a very good leveler. Like, for instance, before you'd have to pay for expertise knowledge, right? Like if you're doing this particular weird commodity trading stuff, that was the preserve for the professionals who spend years in that. Whereas with ChatGPT, you can get at least a junior level understanding of that.
Well, I suppose you've just made me think of a client of mine. He said to me one time, my life's easy because he said, I just do what you tell me to do. Or you and others, you're the experts in whatever you do. So you tell me I need to do, I don't know, buy fertilizer or whatever it happens to be, then that's what I do because you tell me it's a good time to do it. So what you're saying is it's basically doing that for you.
That's good marriage advice, as well as being good advice on how to use AI, because that's it. You're all amazing professionals at your job, but ChatGPT gives you entry level to any other profession as well. And I would use it for such. I'm sure farmers are much better than me at commodity trading, but there's little tricks that commodity traders use as well, like for arbitrage and all that kind of stuff that ChatGPT can give you knowledge on as well. So I would use it from that.
Just to add to that, I think there's something like right now you could do, right, as a farmer with no experience of AI. You could literally take a picture, say, of your barn right now, and AI will analyze that, and it could say, right, the lighting's low, there's not enough space for the cows, the barn's dirty, like things you might know, but it can like see that already. It goes back to the neural networks, and it will have pictures in its data model of here's what a good, big, nice barn looks like, here's not such a nice barn. And you'll be able to pick out things like that. So there's something like you could do straight away to use AI, maybe to help, maybe to give you some insights. But
again, putting me out of a job with the cow signals, but fair enough. James.
James Chapman. So I just think perhaps we're sat in a room with perhaps two exceptions of really a bunch of Neanderthals that are trying to grapple, and even as presenters, you're the wrong side of 40, aren't you? Do you know what I mean? So I think the solution really is to employ amazing young people, intelligent young people that already understand how to best use these tools, and then use our experience and knowledge to make sure they're moving in the correct direction. So just making best use of the tools that we use it on farm, but that's only because I've got 4 bright kids that help me use it well. Do you know what I mean? Because I would not even know how to turn it on. Do you know what I mean?
So you're the guardrail, effectively. What you're saying is you're letting them do the searching, and then you're making the decision.
Yeah, and it's a bit like all young people. Empower them to go for it. So and I think that's where we've got to go with it. And in people mention the caricatures on ChatGPT that are created by, but they're okay, aren't they? But they're a bit samey. There's nothing fantastic about any of them or anything very unique. They're just it's just repeating a model all the time, isn't it? So I'm not an intellectual man, but I'm a practical chap. But I've got a crazy mind that brings up all sorts of stupid ideas, and then I need somebody to just sense check some of those ideas. But ChatGPT is not going to come up with those crazy out of the box ideas, in my opinion. It's just playing safe all the time using data that's already there. So it isn't going to solve all our problems. You still need the crazy bit that humans come up with.
And your knowledge as well that you've inherited as well, most likely, right?
It doesn't, ChatGPT observes the stuff that's in there. It doesn't observe stuff that's on the periphery, and that's what humans do. They use observations, don't they? So
yeah, and then you also get something that's called algorithmic bias in AI. Chris would be able to talk far more about it than I would, but with the data that they're trained on, say it's caricatures. Images of stuff. Like they will be trained on a specific data set. So you often get like a lot of bias in those. If you ask it to produce like a Disney princess, it'll come back as probably a white young female. It won't give you that kind of range because it's been trained on those kind of models. So it's but going back to your point, yes, I think it's the younger generation up, data's all around them, right? Technologies evolve, they grow up with it, so they don't know anything other than that. My kids are 4 and 6 now, and they wouldn't believe like you couldn't swipe on a screen. Like they go to when they were younger, they went to the telly and tried to swipe it. It's like it's almost embarrassing as a parent because they've grown up with that. That's what they think is
normal.
It's normal to them. So they grow up in that environment. So it would be the opposite, right? If they didn't have data or machines, they wouldn't. They think, how the hell do you do farming without this? Whereas you grew up without that.
Well, I know my other half teaches first aid, and she's done some at school. And like you were talking about the screen, she deliberately went and brought some old rotary phones and that off eBay, just so like, how do you work this, kids? And like you say, they just got no idea. And yet for us, it's just what we did. It didn't know any different. And even the push button, I think for them was a bit like, because they're so used to like the smartphones now where it's all touch screen and whatever. Like I guess the point we made earlier, the dichotomy, while we've gained in some ways, we lose in others.
So we've been talking a lot about data, and we've been talking a lot about how data is valuable. Who owns the data? And then probably a second part of that question is really, with that in mind, what data could farmers be using that they're not perhaps doing much with now, but AI could help them do something with?
Well, if I start then, answering who owns that data, I think is a difficult question. I think if you sit on data and you're not doing anything with it, then I think that you could be doing something with it. I think sharing comes back to sharing data, right? It's companies like say Antler Bio. we're only trying to help farmers with data. Like, we need data to be able to give back recommendations, and then it's a constant feedback loop. You would make changes, we collect that data, we see what works, what doesn't, and then we feed that back into our algorithm. So without that data, we don't exist. But if we don't exist, then farmers might not get better at certain things. So it's like that kind of two-way trust almost. What data you're sitting on, I mean, with Leli robots, there's a huge amount of data there. They will be using part of it, right, for predicting things like mastitis from the conductivity or the somatic cell counts, for example. They'll have their own algorithms that they'll be developing on that. But there could be other data that that's very easy to collect. I think potentially the image data that I suggested earlier, barns, the state of the barn, the lighting, like, is quite. There are caveats with that, but you could take pictures of your barn, data that belongs to you. AI could go through that rapidly through neural networks and tell you, like, is your lighting too low? Is it too high? Because lighting will affect, again, back to, I don't want to keep saying Antler Bio, but like we look at epigenetics, right? And everything can pretty much affect epigenetics. So lighting can affect gene expression. That can go on to affect how you respond to nutrients. It is that kind of data that you just have all around you. If it's not structured, if it's not collected, it's kind of, it's wasted data. But it's a difficult question to answer of who owns what. I guess
Perhaps we shouldn't worry about it.
Perhaps. I mean, we're here. This is where I agree with Chris. Like, if everyone shared their data, if everyone in the entire world just shared all the data, we'd probably advance a lot quicker. But then there will always be people, companies that will be using it for not nice reasons, and there will be companies that are trying to use it to better humanity and animal welfare or whatever. So it's a balance. I don't know how to exactly answer that problem.
We're always told that we own our own data in the farming industry. How much of that is true, I just don't know at the minute. And I suppose the big thing is how does a farmer put a financial return on that data, on if he can use it as another income stream? It's other companies are going to be wanting that data to help them develop other things, technology. And if that farmer could put a financial value on giving that data away, that's another income stream for the farming community to try and enhance their business. But the big thing is for me is bringing data in from different platforms and putting it on one platform.
Yeah,
so
that integration is the big one.
Integration. If the sooner we can get to that point, the better. I think we're a long way off for a lot of it.
Again, it's that cooperation between companies, isn't it?
Well, we for instance, we had a project with Mike. So Mike, we had Mike's data for his grass growth and whatnot. In my world, it's insane to think anyone but Mike would own that, or Agri-Tech, whoever the legal is. But you know what I mean. And when I say whilst we sell, whilst we help out commodities traders, we never ever sell data that's not ours. So I would never hand over or sell Mike's data to anyone else. We use it to train our models and to help his farm. It's not our place to then sell that or even aggregate it, then sell it. So we have a strict firewall between those kind of things. And that's fine because we use satellites. We can use satellites to measure it anyway. And for that, we owned all that data because we processed it and cleaned it and all that kind of stuff. And that's just, that's literally driving past someone's field and having a look at their field at scale, right, using satellites. But if it's actually that kind of stuff, 100% farmers own it. To give it a value, I think it's harder. I think individual farms, not worth a lot, to be quite honest, because the issue there is we could make a model for that, but it would only be useful for that farm, which is good because we do that. We do sell that as we do have that as a model. Like all our AI models are per field. So we have a model for every single field in the UK individually using that. But if the farmer gives us their data, we make a completely separate model that's specific for their application. So we can make a more accurate model because of that data. But then that model is only useful to that field, but that's fine because that's what the farmer uses it for. So it depends. So I would always say the farmers, but it's difficult. I think you're going to monetize it. You're going to have to create associations, because a single farm's data isn't worth a lot to an AI model. But if you've got an association with, like, say, thousands, okay, now it does have a value. What that is per farm, I don't know. Okay, but that's when you start to get the value, when it's big data sets. And lastly, I think your question was a great example to give ChatGPT. I would ask ChatGPT, I'd say, look, this is the data I have on my farm. How can you help me? Like, what can you do with this data to help me be a farmer? Yeah, it's a little meta trick that people forget with ChatGPT is you can ask it these sorts of questions as well. Like, how can you help me if I have this data? And do that kind of thing.
And that's the sort of thing that my children do because they understand it. Do you see what I mean? Whereas I wouldn't have perhaps thought of that, but they understand how to best utilize the tool.
The geeky term for that is prompt engineering. If you want to go to Google prompt engineering courses or YouTube videos. There's lots of things to do that. I mean, I'm not that good at that, actually, to be honest. I'm far better at making AI. I'm a terrible prompt engineer, awful. But that's the term you want to search for.
So perhaps our generation need educating on how to best use these tools.
It's just anything. Like I said, I'm a data background, so I attack agriculture because it's data. No AI, machine learning, computing software game is number in, number out, right? I'm from the countryside. I grew up in the countryside, but I'm not a farmer. But that's what I do. But of course, we've got people such as Emma who are from agricultural background to keep me in bounds. So that's our bounds and checks. We do that kind of thing. So I think you're being hard on yourself there. I think it's, I'm from the AI sector, but I need to train myself on prompt engineering as well. I'm not inherently good at it. It's a different skill set. So yeah, I think everyone can be better at it, to be honest with you. I wouldn't necessarily.
But I mean, that's the point of today, really, is to make people aware that they might just think, there's a little bit of ChatGPT or there's a little bit of on our phones, but actually it's out there, and it's now being aware that it's out there and then trying to use it in a more productive way.
Yeah, like ChatGPT, I'll be surprised if I use more than 5% of its features, to be quite honest, but I get a lot done. And so on your point, you could deliver that me. I should be watching these videos and being better at it myself. So I wouldn't use that as a reason not to get, you've definitely not missed the boat or you're behind the scene. I would imagine 99% of people are basic users of ChatGPT.
But it's a bit like, I suppose I made the comment earlier about Google. It's knowing how to ask the questions, and what you're saying, it's ChatGPT, prompt engineering. It's about asking the right prompts, the right questions of it.
Yeah, and I think the advantage I have is I understand how it works, so I can kind of second guess it sometimes, maybe. But even that's a dangerous path to go on.
And that was exactly, so we got involved with the debate with my son as to whether it was a good tool or a bad tool. And there was a debate on LinkedIn, okay, and his comeback was that the more the tools used, the better it gets, and that's very true, isn't it?
It's AI in general. The more data you give it, but again, you have to be careful because you can do what's called overtraining. And so, I gave the example of one farm's data isn't that useful to us because that's 100% overtraining. That AI model can solve that problem and that problem only. Why you want lots of data is because then it becomes more generalized. We'll talk about how well does the model generalize. So if I've made a model in this, and you mentioned bias earlier, that's a bias. If, say, I have a data with 10 fields, 9 is from your farm, 1's from another farm, that AI is going to be more particular to your farm and kind of forget the other one. And that's where we talk about bias and overcorrection. So the more data isn't always, you want good, broad, general data. That's a good picture of it. You don't want it being biased because then that bias comes into it. And I touched on the point earlier, like just the ChatGPT does a lot of hallucinations because it's learned from the internet. So if you've got 1 million people with the same wrong opinion, the AI is going to repeat that opinion. So I think the standard one is if you were to ask ChatGPT 2,000 years ago, it would have been a flat earther because that was the prevailing knowledge then. It would have said the world was flat. So it's the majority opinion. AI does the majority opinion, not necessarily the correct one.
I'm looking at the time now, thinking like usual, it's time we wrap this up. So I guess starting with you, Chris, any last words of wisdom?
I think we've stretched on my wisdom, to be honest with you. I think I've overperformed. It's just over I am. No, it's exactly that. I think don't be afraid of AI. I'll emphasize the point. Just because I make it doesn't mean I'm good at using it. Quite the opposite. I face the same struggles on using ChatGPT anyone else does. So I've got to battle for that. I could definitely be a better user. I tried to make a video the other week there just to show training. So I had to do a video. I was terrible at it. But for the wonders of AI, I managed to churn something out. Whether it replaces a professional, I highly doubt. But yeah, I think the emphasis is use it as a quality of life tool. It saves you time and makes you more efficient. It doesn't replace you. The only person who could argue it replaces is junior hands, maybe. But it's a quality of life tool, and it makes you be more strategic than necessarily tedious jobs.
Ian.
Yeah, no, I'd echo exactly what Chris said there. I think don't be afraid of it. It's here. It's here to stay. It's just like the internet. It's never going to go away now. It's mainstream. Let it empower you and use it carefully. But yeah, it's a good tool. They're good tools. And I agree with Mike about the whole human interaction. Don't forget it. But yeah, use AI responsibly and learn. Yeah,
Mike.
Yes, machine learning, artificial intelligence is here to stay. Embrace it, but always be mindful that you need those guardrails and to just think about the questions that you ask it. And it will help you to be, just better strategic decision making.
Sarah.
I think the takeaway that I've got is that somebody said a really good phrase earlier. Don't let AI be the decision maker. And I think that's my takeaway message, that use it to help with some of those points, but actually don't let it make the decision in that final decision. That human element is still obviously the most important part. So I think that's my learning for the day.
Well, I think it's been a very enjoyable couple of hours now. We'll see what it edits down to when we get there. But I think there's a lot we'll take out is the honest answer. But from my point of view, no, I thank you very much to our three guests. It's been absolutely fantastic. I think there's definitely been some great learning for all of us listening and for those taking part today. But otherwise, again, thank you to UK Agri-Tech Centre for hosting us today and letting this happen and running with the idea. When I approached Mike, I've got this idea. What do you think? And came back very quickly and said yes. So thank you to Mike and to UK Agri-Tech Centre. But otherwise, no, I think it's been really good. It shows that there are many positives. All we hear about maybe is the horror stories in the news, but there are a lot of positives from using AI, and maybe it's not going to quite take over the world just yet. I think you said 50 years, wasn't it, Chris, before the next big step?
Not before 50 years.
So other than that, I'd just like to say thank the three guests, and otherwise, I guess it's a goodbye from me.
And a goodbye from me.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for listening to the Chewing the Cud podcast, a podcast for the UK dairy industry, brought to you from the southwest of England and listened to around the world. And now for the really boring bit, I'm afraid, the legal disclaimer. The information provided during this podcast has been prepared for general information purposes only and does not constitute advice. The information must not be relied upon for any purpose, and no representation or warranty is given to its accuracy, completeness, or otherwise. Any reference to other organisations, businesses or products during this podcast are not endorsements or recommendations of Chewing the Cud Limited. The views of Andrew Jones are personal and may not be the views of Chewing the Cud Limited, and the views of Sarah Bolt are personal and may not be the views of Kingshay Farming and Conservation Limited and any affiliated companies. For more information on the podcast and details of services offered by Chewing the Cud Limited, visit www.chewingthecud.com. Thank you and goodbye.